This is episode number 175. The topic, getting lucky. You're wondering when you're finally going to have success? I've got good news for you. That's coming up.
This is the Red Podcast. How to take your idea and make a name for yourself within your industry and beyond. Spread your message. Attract a following. Rise above the noise. Here's your host, David Hooper.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret that is not so secret. For the last year, I've been working on a book about podcasting, specifically how you as an influencer can market yourself, your products, your business, your ideas via podcasting. The book is almost out. I'm doing some tests in regards to the marketing of podcasts, though. I'm doing them with Red Podcast. And that is the reason for the kind of intermittent frequency that I've had. Bear with me. If you want to make sure that you get every episode that I do, you can go to redpodcast.com and do that. While you're there, sign up for the mailing list. I will let you know as soon as the book is out. I'm not done with it yet. It keeps getting longer and longer. I've got a lot to say. And I promise you, it will be the best book on podcasting that you've ever read. Nobody has approached podcast marketing like I do. I'm bringing my background from radio. I'm bringing my background from the music industry, the digital marketing that we've done for over 10 years on iTunes. I know how to get you up the charts. I know how to get you reviews. I know how to get you listeners. Go to redpodcast.com, sign up for the mailing list. I will let you know the moment that it's out and keep you updated. This is the Red Podcast, the marketing podcast for influencers. If you're a blogger, a speaker, podcaster, marketer, nonfiction author, if you're an entrepreneur with a message, this is the podcast for you. The focus is how to take your idea, make a name for yourself, and make money. On this episode, I'm talking about getting lucky, not in the teenage sense of getting lucky. I'm talking about getting lucky with your business, with your career, having things take off, making money, living the life that you want. This is a very personal episode. If you're somebody that's had success in the past, maybe with your day job, but you're wondering if you're going to be able to do it on your own, maybe you're somebody who's had success on your own in the past, but you're not having it right now. It's a common thing that entrepreneurs face. You know, I've been in business for myself for over 20 years. I started this when I was still in college. Done a lot of different things within this business. It's always been about marketing. It's always been about the entertainment business and building people up to help them spread their messages, get more people to their events, sell more products. Within this time, I've had a record label, I've had a music publishing company, music licensing, where we're licensing content to film and television producers. Done live events. I've done my own books. I've done books for other people. I've done book marketing, music marketing. I own my own syndicated radio show, produced that, done the marketing on that. Like I said, it's the same business, really. It's all in the name of content creation, all in the name of marketing, but there are different elements of it. And every time that I start one of those elements, I ask myself, is this where the story ends? I've done okay so far, but will I be able to continue on this trajectory? And here I am in my 40s, and I'm doing the math, running the numbers, thinking, yeah, I've done this for 20 years, but are things going to be so different in 20 years that I no longer understand things? I've got newer, younger people coming up behind me. They understand the technology a little bit better than I do, maybe. There are more people. The barrier to entry of having your own business and getting into marketing, especially online marketing, it's a lot easier now than it was 20 years ago. I had to have my own custom shopping cart if I wanted to take money. My first money online, you got to the end of the order form, told you where to send the check. That's how advanced it was. We weren't taking credit cards. Or if we did take credit cards, it would take the number in a secure web page. I'm not sure exactly how secure it was, probably not very. And then I'd run them myself. Those are the kind of hoops that we had to jump through. If I was doing recurring billing, which I did, had the first membership site that was non-pornographic, we were doing that stuff by hand every month, pile of transactions, run them by hand. You got charged manually every month for the service that we were providing, which was a marketing service, by the way. So a lot has changed. A lot continues to change. And I'm always questioning, am I going to be able to keep this up? Not only from a knowledge perspective and a being on top of things perspective, but am I going to have the energy? Am I going to have the drive? Am I going to care anymore? And maybe you can relate to this. If you've been in this business for a while, if you've been self-employed for a while, you know that it's a very difficult business to be in, because no matter what you're doing specifically, you always have to be on. If I were working a day job, if you were working a day job, you can show up, your check is going to be there. You can take a few days off, your check is going to be there for you. Now, they might not keep you very long if you're not doing your job and you're not showing up. But when you're self-employed, it's like being a mechanic where if you're not turning that wrench, doing the work, you're not being paid. So no wonder you feel this way, because you never, ever get a break. Now, I'm not saying there's not ease in this, but you have to continuously be moving forward. The guys that I've seen end up on the street, broke, bankrupt, homeless, however you want to describe that, those are the guys that thought that it would never end. Those are the guys that stopped working, stopped improving themselves, stopped getting better, stopped developing. And that's how the other people behind you pass you. So during this process, while you're moving forward, when you're starting new things, or maybe you're in a rut, things aren't working for you right now like they were, maybe you're doing the same thing but not getting the same results. We've got excuses that we tell ourselves as to why things aren't working now or why things might not work for us with our new ventures. Oh, the situation back then was different. I was younger. I had money in the bank. I was married. I was 50 pounds lighter. I was smarter. I was on top of things. I had my finger on the pulse. You think the timing was different? Like I was mentioning earlier, it was a lot easier 20 years ago to break into an online marketing business than it is today. A lot of smart people right now that have grown up around this stuff, they were getting this technology in kindergarten, grew up around computers, grew up around this digital marketing, and they understand it. 20 years ago, if you knew how to do a basic web page, and I mean basic, put something on a gray background, put a couple links up, welcome to my web page, put a photo in there, you were a web designer. I know guys that had no formal training doing web design and making great money 20 years ago. You can't do that today. Pretty much need a degree to do this, some advanced training, and really know what you're doing. So you say the timing was different. That's your excuse. I was younger. Talked about this a minute ago. Yeah, you were younger, had your finger on the pulse, more energy. You didn't have a family. Your expenses were less. You think we had a different team back then. The team was allowing me to do this. You had different partnerships in place. So there are a lot of excuses that we tell ourselves as to why we were lucky in the past and why we might not be lucky in the future, why we can't keep this level of work up. I've never been divorced, but I've watched several friends go through divorce. I've been through similar situations, although I wasn't married. And I think after a situation like that, it's very similar to something that entrepreneurs face, where maybe you've got a product that's selling, you've got a big mailing list, you've got a method of marketing that's working for you, but it's not working anymore. You start to think that it's over. With something personal like a divorce, you start to think, well, I'll never love again. I'll never find anybody else that I'm into as much as I was into this person. But then you do. As long as you're not hiding in a cave, if you get out, you live your life, put one foot in front of the other, then you do. You always do, because that's how the world works. And then you feel better for it. And then you realize, when all is said and done, that you're a better person because of the experience. Now, same thing for entrepreneurship. If you were to just go balls to the wall and have extreme success from day one, you put up a website, the thing takes off in a couple months, extreme success. but you never get that downtime, or you've never had the downtime before you had the success, as a person, you're not as developed. The downtime is what makes true entrepreneurs, in my opinion. Anybody can be successful when you're bringing in a lot of money. But how many people can be successful and still have the traits of a successful person when the chips are down? That's why you see so many people that skyrocket to the top in the online marketing business, in the podcasting business, hit a bump, go away. Real entrepreneurs don't do that. Real entrepreneurs haven't had it come easy to them at the beginning, so when they hit those rough waters, they're in a little bit better shape as far as handling them. So many people in the internet marketing space, the blogging space, podcasting, the book space, now that it's so easy to write a book and put it out on Kindle, so many people don't understand that longevity, and I'm talking like I've had 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, real longevity, making this a career and not just a job that you've got for a couple years. They don't understand the ups and downs of popularity. But if you look at entertainment, which is the industry that I come from, there's a completely different side of this story. It's extremely common to see somebody who's famous and then go through a period where nobody knows who they are, nobody knows where they are, and the only question that somebody is asking about them is, where are they now? Nobody's booking them. Nobody cares. As we say in the entertainment business, nobody would piss on them if they were on fire. It's extremely common. In fact, thinking about the example that I just gave, it's so common. If I were to ask you to name one of these artists that was famous and now you don't know where they are now, you might not be able to think of one, because artists come and go. Fame comes and goes. Entrepreneurs come and go. But then the person has a comeback, and it seems like that person has disappeared, but what's really happened has been that the person never went away. You just weren't aware of them. You just weren't aware of what they were doing. They were still out working, a lot of them every weekend. Private events, independent publishing, smaller venues, hitting the road, working for smaller audiences, working behind the scenes, working with other people, letting those people have the spotlight. Then we call it a comeback, but what really happened is those people never went away. So let's take it back to you. If you're in a dip in your career, you've had that success in the past, or you've had success in another industry, and you're wondering if you're going to have success again with your new venture, what you're doing now. Remember this, that what got you here still works. The technology might change. The young guys might be coming up behind you, and they might understand social media better. Instagram, iPhones, computers, podcasting, the equipment that it takes to record a podcast. They might understand those things better. But those things can easily be hired out. The real talent that's brought you this far, that's what's going to continue to propel you forward. Now, I've seen a lot of people in the entertainment industry, in the influencer business, that appear to be lucky. They've got three things in common. One of them, kind of alluded to it, consistency. They show up. You think they're not around, but they're continuing to work even though there's not an audience in front of them. Authors still write. Musicians still create. They didn't just go away then come back. They've always been there, but they've gotten better. They've continued to produce, and people are finally starting to pay attention again. So number one, consistency. The second thing, number two, and this is something that I've got way more of in my 40s than I did in my 20s. I've got more in my 40s than I did in my 30s. I'm going to have more in my 50s than my 40s and more in my 60s than my 50s. You will too, as you get older, you get more experienced. Intuition. This is a huge benefit of getting older. You learn to know what works for you and also what doesn't. This allows you to feel out opportunities, say no to the ones that aren't working for you, and that allows you to put more energy into the things that do, so you can actually work less and get bigger results. And if you want to work more, you put all that energy into the things that are working for you so you get even bigger results. Successful people, the lucky ones, the ones we're talking about, the people like I want you to be, they don't just chase what's popular. And that's one of the reasons why it seems that people just drop out. They're not chasing what's popular. They're doing what they do, their true art, following their true passion, spreading their true message, and then they wait for the world to come around to them. All great thinkers are ahead of their time. They're not just playing to the audience. They're letting the audience come to them. I've talked about Richard Pryor here before. Look up Richard Pryor when he was an R&B singer. Look up Richard Pryor when he was doing milquetoast, kind of safe Bill Cosby type material, clean stuff. Richard Pryor got out on stage one night, looked at the audience, realized that being in front of that type of audience wasn't where he needed to be. It wasn't bringing his best self forward, and that he was just chasing the money. He looked out over him. He said, "What the f*** am I doing here?" Walked off. It's about 7 years before we heard from him again. But when he came back, that's when everybody had caught up to him. That's when he had his true self out there. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about getting lucky. Consistently working and following his intuition. Not just going for that easy, low-hanging fruit, but really going for what you have to bring to the table. So don't just chase what's popular. If it appears that you drop out because you're doing something that people aren't ready for, so be it, but they will come around. When you bring the passion into it, they will come around. And here's another thing. This is number 3 that you also have to bring into it. That's purpose. Recently, we just had an election here in Nashville. Last week, in fact. And over the last 3 or 4 months, almost every day, somebody knocking on my door, vote for this candidate, vote for that candidate, vote for this candidate, vote for that candidate. A few of these candidates I actually got to know, councilmen especially, the guys that were running just in my neighborhood, just in my area. These guys were all over the place. What allows them to knock on a door and get rejected? I had people coming up to my door when I had their competitors sign in my yard. That takes balls, right? When you know that the house that you're getting ready to knock on the door of does not support you, is supporting your enemy. Purpose is what allows you to do that. When you really believe in a message, it doesn't matter who you're going up against. The low-hanging fruit is there, and you don't care because your purpose is so strong. That is how elections are won. That is how opinions are changed. That is how products are sold, and that is how careers are forged. Anybody can get lucky sometimes. And if you're watching people who are involved with online marketing, you're watching the people who are listening to this podcast, the people who are just like you, marketers, podcasters, bloggers, influencers. Some of them are just getting lucky. They showed up, the stars aligned, right time, right place, right product, right message, right audience. And they got lucky. But what happens to those people when something changes? Opinions change. The way you're doing marketing isn't allowed anymore. Those people disappear. And that's good for the career people because the career people want to be there. And this is how it all fits together. The highs and the lows that I'm talking about, if you can handle the lows and really get used to the lows and get that purpose together and still act successful even when you're not successful, you can handle the highs. And that is when you swoop in, and that's how you get lucky. So to recap, the 3 things that I've found from people who are lucky. And this is working with hundreds of musicians, authors, online entrepreneurs, people who have been successful at building an audience, spreading a message, selling products and services with that message. 1, consistency. They show up, and they show up daily. They don't need to have an audience to show up. They do their work, let the audience come to them. Intuition, and this is something that comes from showing up every day. It comes with age. They're able to feel out opportunities. And then purpose. And think about this visual that I gave with the politician. Purpose is what lets you knock on the door even when your competitor's sign is in the front yard, because you've got that bigger purpose and you're not intimidated, because you've got that message that is bigger than your fear of being rejected. You've got questions, you've got comments, reach out to me. I would love to know your longevity stories and what you do to keep moving forward when not everything is going your way, because it doesn't. If everything's going your way, you haven't been in the business long enough. Hills and valleys. Every career has them, and if you've got one, you're going to get the other. Next episode coming up, 176, and you can get this by going to redpodcast.com. Subscribe. That'll make sure you never miss an episode of Red Podcast. A lot of people have been asking about resources. What do I do to move my business forward? I like to keep it simple. I'm not a guy who likes to get overly technical. I've got a few basic things that I do every day, resources that I use that I'm going to share with you on the next episode. That's coming up. Thanks so much for listening to Red Podcast. It means a lot to me. I'm excited about where this podcast is going, and I'm excited about sharing my new book on how to market via podcasting with you. If you're interested in that, go to redpodcast.com. I've got a mailing list where you can get updates. And if you've got a friend that might be interested, I'd appreciate you spreading the word about Red Podcast and about this book. I appreciate you. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of Red Podcast.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.